When Dorothy Williams received a devastating call from her son, Marcus, informing her that she was too ugly to attend his wedding, she never imagined that her quiet strength and grace would soon shine brighter than any spotlight, proving that true beauty lies not in appearances, but in the unbreakable bond of a mother's love. The afternoon sun filtered through the lace curtains of Dorothy Williams' modest living room. At 62, she moved with the careful grace of someone who had carried the weight of the world on her shoulders for decades. The walls were covered with photographs, graduation pictures, birthday parties, and countless memories of raising her son Marcus as a single mother after his father left when he was 8. Dorothy was arranging fresh flowers she'd picked from her small garden when the phone rang. Her face lit up with the familiar joy that always came when she saw Marcus's name on the caller ID. "Marcus, baby, how are you? I was just thinking about you," she said, settling into her worn but comfortable armchair. The voice on the other end was different than usual, formal, distant. "Hey, Mom, listen, I need to talk to you about something important." Dorothy's maternal instincts immediately picked up on the tension in his voice. "What is it, honey? You sound stressed. Is everything okay with you and Jennifer?" "Actually, that's what I'm calling about. We've set the wedding date. It's going to be next month at the Grandview Country Club. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss." Dorothy's heart swelled with excitement. She had been waiting for this moment for 3 years, ever since Marcus had introduced her to Jennifer, a successful attorney from an affluent family. "Oh, Marcus, that's wonderful news. I'm so happy for you both. I can't wait to—" "Mom, stop." The sharpness in his voice cut through her joy like a blade. "That's what I need to talk to you about. This wedding. It's going to be a high-profile event. Jennifer's family, they're important people in this city. Her father sits on the board of 3 major corporations." Dorothy felt a chill run down her spine, but she kept her voice steady. "Okay, baby, what are you trying to tell me?" There was a long pause, and when Marcus spoke again, his words came out in a rush, as if he was trying to get them out before he lost his nerve. "The thing is, Mom, this wedding is going to be photographed for the society pages. There will be influential people there, people who could affect my career, and Jennifer and I think it would be best if you didn't attend." The words hit Dorothy like a physical blow. She gripped the phone tighter, trying to process what she was hearing. "I don't understand, Marcus. Why wouldn't you want your mother at your wedding?" "It's not that simple, Mom. You have to understand the position I'm in. I've worked so hard to build my reputation at the firm. Jennifer's family has connections that could make or break my future. And you... Mom, you don't fit in with that crowd." Dorothy's voice was barely a whisper now. "What do you mean I don't fit in?" The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. When Marcus finally spoke, his words were like poison. "Mom, let's be honest here. You're a housekeeper. You live in a neighborhood that, well, it's not exactly prestigious. And frankly, you're not attractive enough for this kind of event. I can't have you there embarrassing me in front of Jennifer's family and my colleagues." The phone slipped from Dorothy's trembling hands and clattered to the floor. For a moment, she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't feel anything except the crushing weight of her son's rejection, the son she had sacrificed everything for, worked 3 jobs to put through college, loved unconditionally despite his father's abandonment. That son had just called her too ugly, too poor, too embarrassing to attend his wedding. She picked up the phone with shaking hands. Marcus was still talking, his voice now taking on a defensive tone. "Mom? Mom, are you there? Look, I know this is hard to hear, but I'm just being practical. I'll make it up to you, I promise. We can have a small dinner afterward, just family." Dorothy's voice, when she finally found it, was calm and measured. It was the voice of a woman who had endured decades of hardship and had learned to swallow pain. "I understand, Marcus. You do? Yes, baby. I understand perfectly." She paused, looking around at the photographs on her walls. Pictures of a little boy she had raised alone, loved alone, sacrificed for alone. "You do what you think is best for your future. Mom, I love you, Marcus. I always have and I always will. You have a beautiful wedding, you hear me?" Before he could respond, she hung up the phone. Dorothy sat in that chair for what felt like hours, staring at the silent phone. The afternoon sun had shifted, casting long shadows across the room, but she hadn't moved. The flowers she had been arranging lay scattered on the coffee table, their bright colors seeming to mock the darkness that had settled over her heart. Finally, she rose and walked slowly to her bedroom. On the dresser sat a small jewelry box, worn and faded from years of use. Inside, wrapped carefully in tissue paper, was a pearl necklace, the only thing of value her own mother had left her. She had been saving it for Marcus's wedding day, imagining how proud she would feel wearing it as she watched her son start his new life. She held the pearls up to the light, remembering the day her mother had given them to her. "Every woman deserves to feel beautiful on the most important days," her mother had said. "These will be for your son's wedding day." Dorothy carefully placed the necklace back in its box. There would be no wedding day for her. The next few weeks passed in a strange, quiet routine. Dorothy continued her work, cleaning houses for wealthy families in the suburbs. Families not unlike Jennifer's, she imagined. She listened to their casual conversations about charity galas and country club events, about their children's accomplishments and society weddings. She cleaned their silver and arranged their flowers, invisible in her uniform, part of the background of their privileged lives. Her clients often commented on what a good worker she was, how she never complained, how she had such a gentle way about her. Mrs. Patterson, whose house she cleaned on Thursdays, even mentioned how much she looked forward to seeing Dorothy's kind face each week. "You have such beautiful eyes, Dorothy," she had said just the week before. "They're so warm and caring. You light up the whole room when you smile." But Dorothy wasn't smiling much these days. 3 days before the wedding, Marcus called again. This time his voice carried a note of guilt that he was trying hard to suppress. "Mom? How are you doing?" "I'm fine, baby. Working hard, keeping busy." "Good, good. Listen, I wanted to make sure you understood that this isn't personal. It's just business. You know how it is." Dorothy's voice remained steady. "I know, Marcus. You don't need to explain. I'm going to make this up to you, Mom. After the honeymoon, Jennifer and I will take you out to a nice dinner. Somewhere fancy. You'd like that, wouldn't you?" "That sounds lovely, baby. And Mom, maybe you could, I don't know, maybe think about getting yourself fixed up a little. You know, a new hairstyle, maybe some nice clothes. I could give you some money for it. I just want you to feel good about yourself." Dorothy closed her eyes, feeling the familiar ache in her chest. "Whatever you think is best, Marcus." After she hung up, she walked to her bathroom mirror and looked at herself. Really looked. She saw a woman who had aged before her time, worn down by years of physical labor and emotional sacrifice. She saw the lines around her eyes, earned from squinting in harsh cleaning supplies and staying up late to help with homework. She saw the calloused hands that had worked tirelessly to provide for her son. She saw the body that had carried him, fed him, comforted him through every nightmare and fever. She saw a mother's love written in every line, every gray hair, every imperfection. And for the first time in weeks, Dorothy smiled. The morning of Marcus's wedding dawned bright and clear. Dorothy woke early, as she always did, and prepared herself for what she knew would be the most difficult day of her life. She dressed simply in a navy blue dress she had worn to church for years, pinned her graying hair back neatly, and applied a touch of lipstick, the same shade she had worn for special occasions since Marcus was a boy. She made herself a cup of coffee and sat at her small kitchen table, looking out at the garden where she had taught Marcus to plant seeds when he was young. She remembered his excitement when the first tomatoes had ripened, how he had run to her with the bright red fruit, calling her the best mommy in the world. At 10 o'clock, she picked up her purse and car keys. She had made a decision. The Grandview Country Club was everything Marcus had described: elegant, prestigious, intimidating. Dorothy parked her 15-year-old sedan between a Mercedes and a BMW, feeling like an intruder in this world of manicured lawns and marble fountains. She didn't go inside. Instead, she found a bench in the garden area where she could see the main entrance. She wanted to see her son on his wedding day, even if he didn't want to see her. At noon, the guests began arriving. Dorothy watched as elegantly dressed people stepped out of luxury cars, the women in designer dresses and the men in expensive suits. She recognized some faces from the society pages of the newspaper: judges, business leaders, politicians. These were Marcus's people now, she realized. This was the world he wanted to belong to. At 12:30, a white limousine pulled up to the entrance. Dorothy's breath caught in her throat as she watched Marcus step out, resplendent in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. He looked handsome and successful, every inch the rising young attorney he had worked so hard to become. He was followed by Jennifer, stunning in an elaborate white gown that probably cost more than Dorothy made in 6 months. She was beautiful, Dorothy had to admit, the kind of polished, refined beauty that belonged in magazines and country clubs. Dorothy felt a surge of maternal pride mixed with profound sadness. Her son looked happy, confident, ready to start his new life. And she was watching it from a distance, like a stranger, like someone who didn't matter. As the wedding party gathered for photographs on the front steps of the club, Dorothy could see Marcus laughing and embracing his groomsmen. Jennifer's family surrounded them. Her father, tall and distinguished, her mother elegant in pearls and silk. They looked like the perfect family, the kind of family Marcus had always wanted to be part of. For a moment, Marcus looked around, and Dorothy thought she saw him scanning the crowd, perhaps looking for someone. She wondered if, despite everything, he might be missing her presence on this important day. Then Jennifer took his arm, and he turned his attention back to his new family, his new life. Dorothy sat on that bench for 2 hours, watching from afar, as her son celebrated the most important day of his life without her. She watched as guests filed into the chapel, listened to the distant sound of wedding music, and imagined the ceremony she would never see. When the celebration moved inside, for the reception, Dorothy finally stood to leave. As she walked back to her car, she passed a group of guests who had stepped outside for some air. "Beautiful wedding," one woman was saying. "Jennifer looks absolutely radiant." "Marcus seems like such a nice young man," another replied. "So polished. So well-mannered. You can tell he comes from good breeding." Dorothy paused, hidden behind a large pillar, listening to them discuss her son. "I heard he's completely self-made," a man was saying. "Came from nothing, pulled himself up by his bootstraps. No family money, no connections, just pure determination." "How? Inspiring," the first woman replied. "Though I did notice there didn't seem to be much family on his side. Just a few friends from law school." "Well, that's probably for the best," the man continued. "Sometimes family can be complicated, especially when someone rises above their circumstances like Marcus has. Better to start fresh." Dorothy felt something inside her chest crack and break. Her son hadn't just excluded her from his wedding, he had erased her entirely. To these people, to his new family, to his new life, she didn't exist. All the years of sacrifice, all the love, all the struggles they had endured together had been wiped away as if they had never happened. She walked to her car in a daze, her heart heavy with a grief unlike anything she had ever experienced. Even when Marcus's father had left, she had still had her son. Now, she truly was alone. Dorothy drove home slowly, taking the long way through the city she had called home for over 40 years. She passed the apartment building where she and Marcus had lived when he was small, the elementary school where she had volunteered in his classroom, the park where she had pushed him on swings and taught him to ride a bicycle. Every landmark was a memory, every memory a reminder of the love that had apparently meant so little to the man her son had become. When she finally reached her house, she was surprised to see a car in her driveway, a car she didn't recognize. As she pulled in behind it, a woman stepped out. She was well-dressed but not ostentatious, probably in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair. "Mrs. Williams?" The woman approached hesitantly. "I'm sorry to bother you. My name is Margaret Patterson. I believe you clean my house on Thursdays?" Dorothy nodded, confused. "Yes, ma'am. Is everything all right? Did I forget something?" "Oh, no. Nothing like that. You do beautiful work. Always have." Margaret paused, seeming to struggle with her words. "I hope you don't mind me coming here, but I wanted to talk to you about something. May I come in?" Dorothy led her into the living room, hastily straightening cushions and apologizing for the modest surroundings. Margaret waved off her apologies and sat down, looking around at the photographs covering the walls. "What a handsome young man," she said, pointing to a graduation picture of Marcus. "Your son?" "Yes, ma'am, that's Marcus. He got married today, actually." Margaret's expression shifted, and she looked at Dorothy with something that might have been pity. "I see. That must be a very special day for you." "Yes, ma'am." Margaret was quiet for a moment, then leaned forward. "Mrs. Williams, I need to ask you something, and I hope you won't be offended. Are you familiar with a young man named Marcus Williams, an attorney with Henderson, Morrison and Associates?" Dorothy felt her heart skip a beat. That's my son." "How do you know Marcus?" "He handled some legal work for my husband's company about 6 months ago. Very impressive young man. Very professional." Margaret paused again. "The thing is, Mrs. Williams, during our conversations he mentioned his background. He told us he was orphaned as a child, that he had grown up in foster care and put himself through college and law school with no family support." The words hit Dorothy like a slap. She stared at Margaret, unable to speak. "I'm telling you this," Margaret continued gently, "because it didn't sit right with me. You see, I've gotten to know you over the past 2 years, Mrs. Williams. I've heard you talk about your son with such pride and love. I've seen the way your face lights up when you mention his accomplishments. And I've seen the photographs in your home. Pictures of you raising that boy, supporting him, loving him." Dorothy's hands were shaking now. "He told people he was an orphan." "I'm afraid so. He painted quite a picture of overcoming adversity without any family support. It was very compelling, actually. Made quite an impression on my husband and his business partners." Margaret reached over and gently took Dorothy's hand. "I came here today because I wanted you to know that some of us see the truth. I see a woman who sacrificed everything for her child. I see the love in this house, the evidence of a mother who gave her son every opportunity to succeed. And I see a son who has chosen to forget where he came from." Dorothy finally found her voice, though it was barely a whisper. "He didn't want me at his wedding. Said I was too ugly, too embarrassing for his new life." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, my dear woman, you are one of the most beautiful people I know. Your kindness, your grace, your gentle spirit, that's true beauty. That boy doesn't deserve you. They sat in silence for a while, two women from different worlds united by the recognition of a profound injustice. Finally, Margaret stood to leave. Mrs. Williams, I want you to know something. Next week, my husband is hosting a charity gala, one of the biggest social events of the year. We're honoring people who have made significant contributions to our community through service and sacrifice. I would be honored if you would attend as our special guest. Dorothy shook her head. Oh, I couldn't. I don't have anything appropriate to wear to something like that, and I wouldn't know how to act around those kinds of people. Nonsense. You are more elegant and gracious than half the women who will be there. As for clothes, well, I happen to know someone who would be delighted to help with that. Margaret smiled. Consider it a gift from one mother to another. After Margaret left, Dorothy sat alone in her living room, surrounded by pictures of the son who had erased her from his life. For the first time in weeks, she felt something other than grief and rejection. She felt a spark of something that might have been hope. The next morning, Dorothy woke to find a garment bag hanging on her front door, along with a note from Margaret. Every woman deserves to feel beautiful. See you Saturday night. M. Inside. The bag was the most beautiful dress Dorothy had ever seen, elegant navy blue silk with subtle beading that caught the light. It was sophisticated without being flashy, expensive without being ostentatious. It was exactly the kind of dress she had always dreamed of wearing but never thought she would have occasion to own. Along with the dress were matching shoes, a small, beaded purse, and another note. My daughter is about your size and insisted you have these. She said every elegant woman needs the perfect accessories. Dorothy held the dress up to herself in the mirror, hardly recognizing the woman looking back at her. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to imagine feeling beautiful, feeling worthy of being seen. The rest of the week passed in a blur of preparation. Margaret had arranged for Dorothy to visit a salon, not for a dramatic makeover, but for what the stylist called enhancing her natural beauty. They trimmed her hair into a flattering style, gave her a subtle manicure, and showed her how to apply makeup that highlighted her warm eyes and gentle smile. You have such classic features, the stylist had said, and your skin is beautiful. You must have good genes. Dorothy had laughed, thinking of all the years she had worried about looking older than her age, never realizing that the character lines on her face told the story of a life well lived, of love freely given. On Saturday evening, as Dorothy prepared for the gala, she thought about Marcus. Today marked 1 week since his wedding, 1 week since he had started his new life without her. She wondered if he ever thought about her, if he ever felt even a moment's regret for the words he had spoken. She picked up her mother's pearl necklace from the jewelry box and fastened it around her neck. Looking in the mirror, she saw not the embarrassing woman Marcus had described, but a dignified lady who had earned every line on her face and every gray hair on her head through decades of selfless love. The gala was being held at the grand ballroom of the city's most prestigious hotel. As Dorothy stepped out of the car Margaret had sent for her, she felt a moment of panic. The entrance was crowded with photographers and elegantly dressed guests, the same kind of crowd that had gathered for Marcus's wedding, but this time, she belonged here. This time, she had been invited not in spite of who she was, but because of it. Margaret met her at the entrance, stunning in a silver gown, and immediately took her arm. Dorothy, you look absolutely radiant. I am so proud to have you here tonight. As they walked into the ballroom, Dorothy was amazed by the elegance of the event. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables decorated with white roses and gold accents. The city's elite mingled over cocktails, their conversations creating a sophisticated hum throughout the room. Mrs. Patterson! A voice called out, and Dorothy turned to see a distinguished older man approaching them. How wonderful to see you! Is this your special guest? Indeed it is, Margaret replied warmly. Charles, I'd like you to meet Dorothy Williams. Dorothy, this is my husband, Charles Patterson. Charles took Dorothy's hand with genuine warmth. Mrs. Williams, Margaret has told me so much about you. We are honored to have you here tonight. Throughout the cocktail hour, Margaret introduced Dorothy to person after person. Judges, business leaders, philanthropists, and community activists. Each introduction came with a brief explanation of Dorothy's story, not as a victim or charity case, but as an example of quiet heroism and selfless dedication. Dorothy has spent decades serving our community, Margaret would say. She's one of those unsung heroes who make our city a better place through her daily acts of kindness and service. Dorothy was amazed by how warmly people responded to her. They asked about her work, her life, her experiences. They listened to her stories with genuine interest and treated her with the same respect they showed each other. "You have such a calming presence," one woman commented. "I can tell you're someone who really cares about people." "I've never met anyone with such authentic grace," another said. "You remind me of my own mother. She had that same quiet dignity." As the evening progressed, Dorothy began to relax and enjoy herself. She realized that these people, despite their wealth and status, were simply human beings who appreciated kindness and authenticity when they encountered it. Then came the moment that would change everything. The formal program was about to begin, when Dorothy heard a familiar voice from across the room. Her blood ran cold as she turned to see Marcus standing near the bar, impeccably dressed in a tuxedo, engaged in animated conversation with a group of men she recognized as prominent attorneys. He was here, at the same event she was attending. The irony was almost too much to bear. Margaret noticed her reaction immediately. "Dorothy, what is it? You've gone pale." That's my son," Dorothy whispered, pointing toward Marcus. "The tall one, by the bar." Margaret's expression hardened. "The one who told people he was an orphan? The one who didn't want you at his wedding?" Dorothy nodded, unable to speak. Her first instinct was to flee, to avoid the confrontation and humiliation that would surely come if Marcus saw her here. But something held her in place. Perhaps it was the way she looked tonight. Perhaps it was the warm reception she had received from everyone she had met, or perhaps it was simply the realization that she had every right to be here. "Do you want to leave?" Margaret asked gently. Dorothy straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin. "No, I belong here as much as he does." As if sensing her gaze, Marcus looked across the room and froze. For a moment, his face showed pure shock. He clearly couldn't believe what he was seeing. His mother, the woman he had deemed too embarrassing for his wedding, was here at one of the city's most exclusive social events, looking elegant and dignified, surrounded by some of the same people he was trying to impress. Dorothy watched as confusion, then something that might have been shame, flickered across his features. He excused himself from his group and began walking toward her, his expression uncertain. "Mom?" His voice was barely audible when he reached her. What are you doing here?" Margaret stepped forward before Dorothy could answer. "Marcus, isn't it? I'm Margaret Patterson. Your mother is here as my personal guest. She's being honored tonight for her years of service to our community." Marcus looked between his mother and Margaret, clearly struggling to process the situation. "Honored? I don't understand." "Your mother," Margaret continued, her voice carrying a subtle but unmistakable note of disapproval, "is one of the most dedicated, selfless people I know. She's spent her life serving others, raising you, and making our community a better place. That's exactly the kind of person we celebrate at events like this." Dorothy watched her son's face as the full impact of the situation hit him. Here he was at a gathering of the city's elite, confronted with the reality that the mother he had rejected was not only accepted by these people, but celebrated by them. "Mom, you look—" He paused, seeming to really see her for the first time in years. "You look beautiful." "Thank you, Marcus." Dorothy's voice was calm, dignified. "You look well. How was your honeymoon?" The small talk felt surreal under the high circumstances, but Dorothy was determined to maintain her composure. She could see other guests beginning to notice their interaction, and she was acutely aware that this conversation could become very public very quickly. It was good. Marcus seemed unable to take his eyes off his mother. "Mom, I need to talk to you, privately." "I'm afraid that will have to wait," Margaret interjected smoothly. "The program is about to begin, and Dorothy is needed at the head table." Marcus's eyes widened. "The head table?" "Of course. She's one of tonight's honorees. Didn't you know?" Margaret's tone was innocent, but Dorothy could hear the steel underneath it. As they walked toward the front of the room, Dorothy could feel Marcus's eyes following them. She held her head high, her mother's pearls catching the light, feeling more beautiful and dignified than she had in years. The program began with Charles Patterson taking the stage to welcome the guests. He spoke eloquently about the importance of recognizing those who serve their communities quietly, without seeking recognition or reward. "Tonight," he said, "we honor individuals who have made our city a better place through their daily actions, their quiet sacrifices, and their unwavering commitment to helping others. These are the people who remind us what true service looks like." Dorothy sat at the head table, acutely aware that Marcus was somewhere in the audience, watching everything unfold. When her name was called as one of the honorees, she felt a surge of emotion that nearly overwhelmed her. Margaret rose to introduce her, and Dorothy was amazed by the words she heard. "Dorothy Williams has spent the last 20 years cleaning homes and offices throughout our city, but that's only part of her story. She's the woman who worked 3 jobs to put her son through college, who never missed a parent-teacher conference. Despite working double shifts, who volunteered at her local church food bank every weekend for 15 years. The audience listened intently as Margaret continued. "She's the woman who, despite having very little herself, has never turned away. A neighbor in need. She's housed homeless families in her own small home, shared her meals with hungry children, and offered comfort to anyone going through difficult times." Dorothy felt tears welling up in her eyes. She had never thought of her actions as anything special. They were simply what needed to be done, what her heart told her to do. "Dorothy Williams represents the very best of our community," Margaret concluded. "She reminds us that true beauty comes from within, that real wealth is measured in love given rather than money earned, and that the most important work in this world is often done by those who seek no recognition for it." The audience rose in a standing ovation that seemed to go on forever. Dorothy stood slowly, overwhelmed by the response, and found herself looking directly at Marcus. He was applauding too, but she could see tears streaming down his face. When she reached the podium to accept her award, a beautiful crystal plaque recognizing her years of community service, Dorothy spoke from her heart. "I'm deeply honored to receive this recognition, but I want you to know that I never did any of these things seeking awards or acknowledgement. I did them because they needed to be done, because someone needed help, because that's what we do for each other in a community." She paused, looking out at the sea of faces, finding Marcus in the crowd. "I was blessed to be a mother, and being a mother taught me that love means sacrifice. That sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is to put their needs before your own. That lesson extended beyond my own family to everyone I encountered who needed help or comfort or just someone to see their worth." Her voice grew stronger as she continued. "I want to thank the Patterson family for reminding me tonight that every person has value, that every life has dignity, and that we all deserve to be seen and appreciated for who we are, not judged by what we lack." The applause was thunderous, but Dorothy barely heard it. She was looking at her son, who was crying openly now, his face a mixture of pride, shame, and profound regret. After the formal program ended, guests mingled during the reception that followed. Dorothy found herself surrounded by people wanting to congratulate her, share their own stories, and express their admiration for her quiet strength. She was in conversation with a group of women who had been moved by her speech when she felt a gentle touch on her arm. She turned to find Marcus standing behind her, his eyes red from crying. "Mom, please, I need to talk to you. Just 5 minutes." The women she had been talking with, sensing the tension, excused themselves gracefully. Dorothy looked at her son, really looked at him, and saw not the successful attorney who had rejected her, but the little boy who used to crawl into her bed during thunderstorms. "All right, Marcus. 5 minutes." They found a quiet corner of the ballroom, away from the crowd, but still visible to other guests. Marcus struggled to find words, his usual articulate confidence completely gone. "Mom, I don't know where to start. Seeing you here tonight, watching you receive that recognition, hearing what Mrs. Patterson said about you." He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture Dorothy remembered from his childhood when he was frustrated or upset. "I've made a terrible mistake, the worst mistake of my life." Dorothy waited, saying nothing. "I was so focused on fitting in, on being accepted by Jennifer's family and my colleagues, that I lost sight of what really mattered. I was ashamed of where I came from, ashamed of being poor, ashamed of—" He stopped, unable to continue. "Ashamed of me," Dorothy finished quietly. "Yes." The word came out as a whisper. "God help me, yes. And I was so wrong, Mom. So incredibly wrong." Marcus looked around the ballroom, taking in the elegant setting, the distinguished guests, the atmosphere of refinement and success. "Do you know what's ironic? All these people that I was so desperate to impress, they're the same people who are honoring you tonight. They see your worth, your beauty, your value, everything I was too blind and selfish to see." Dorothy felt her heart breaking all over again, but this time it was breaking for him, not because of him. "Marcus, no, please, let me finish. I need to say this." He took a shaky breath. "I told people you were dead, Mom. I told them I was an orphan because I thought it would make me more sympathetic, more impressive. I erased you from my life completely because I thought you were holding me back." The admission hung between them, like a physical weight. "But the truth is, everything I am, everything I've accomplished is because of you. You worked yourself to exhaustion to give me opportunities. You sacrificed your own dreams so I could chase mine. You loved me unconditionally even when I didn't deserve it." Dorothy could see the genuine anguish in his eyes, the weight of his realization crushing down on him. "I called you ugly, Mom. I said you were too embarrassing to be at my wedding. But look at you tonight. You're the most beautiful woman in this room. Not because of what you're wearing or how your hair looks, but because of who you are. The kindness that radiates from you, the grace with which you carry yourself, the dignity you've maintained even when I didn't deserve it." He was crying openly, now not caring who might see. "I am so sorry, Mom. I am so incredibly sorry. I don't know if you can ever forgive me, but I need you to know that I was wrong about everything. You're not too poor, too plain, too embarrassing. I was too shallow, too selfish, too stupid to see what everyone else sees when they look at you." Dorothy reached up and gently wiped the tears from his face, the same gesture she had made countless times when he was a child with a scraped knee or a broken toy. "Oh, Marcus," she said softly, "I forgave you the moment you said those hurtful things. That's what mothers do. We love our children even when they break our hearts." "How can you forgive me so easily, after what I did, after what I said?" Dorothy smiled, and in that smile was all the love and wisdom of her 62 years. "Because I know who you really are, baby. I know the little boy who used to bring me dandelions and tell me I was the prettiest mommy in the world. I know the—" Teenager who worked part-time jobs to help with bills even though I told him to focus on school. I know the young man who called me every Sunday from college just to make sure I was okay. She cupped his face in her hands. You lost your way for a while, son. People do that sometimes when they're trying to find their place in the world, but you found your way back and that's what matters. Marcus pulled her into a fierce embrace, holding her as if he never wanted to let her go. I love you, Mom. I love you so much, and I'm so proud to be your son. I love you too, baby. I always have, and I always will. Word of the emotional reunion between Dorothy and Marcus spread quickly through the ballroom. What could have been a source of gossip or scandal instead became something beautiful, a story of forgiveness, redemption, and the unbreakable bond between mother and son. Several guests approached them throughout the evening, moved by what they had witnessed. Charles. Patterson pulled Marcus aside at one point, his expression serious but not unkind. Son, I've been in business for 40 years, and I've learned that a man's character is revealed not by his mistakes, but by how he handles them when he realizes he's wrong. What you did tonight took courage. Marcus nodded, still emotional. I have a lot to make up for, sir. Yes, you do. But you've got a good foundation to build on. Charles glanced toward Dorothy, who was surrounded by admirers sharing their own stories of mothers and family. That woman raised you right. Don't forget it again. As the evening wound down, Marcus walked his mother to the car Margaret had arranged to take her home. Before she got in, he took her hands in his. Mom, I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to try to make things right. Would you be willing to meet Jennifer, to give us a chance to start over? Dorothy searched, his eyes seeing the sincerity there. Of course, baby. But Marcus, you need to understand something. I don't need your new family to accept me to know my worth. Tonight showed me that. I'm valuable because of who I am, not because of who approves of me. Marcus nodded, understanding the profound lesson in her words. You're right, and I promise. I will never again let anyone, including myself, make you feel otherwise. 2 days later, Marcus called to arrange a lunch meeting. This time, his voice carried none of the distance or formality that had characterized their recent conversations. He sounded like her son again. I've told Jennifer everything, Mom, about my childhood, about you, about what I did. She wants to meet you and apologize personally. They met at a small cafe in Dorothy's neighborhood. Not the fancy restaurant Marcus had originally suggested, but a place where Dorothy felt comfortable, where she was known and welcomed. Jennifer arrived first, looking nervous and uncertain. She was beautiful, just as Dorothy remembered from the wedding photos, but today she seemed younger, more vulnerable. She stood when Dorothy entered, extending her hand hesitantly. Mrs. Williams, I'm Jennifer. I'm so sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. Dorothy studied her daughter-in-law's face, seeing genuine remorse there. Please, call me Dorothy. And there's nothing to apologize for, dear, you didn't know. They sat down and Jennifer struggled to find words. Actually, there is something to apologize for. I knew Marcus was uncomfortable about his background. I could see it in the way he avoided talking about his family, the way he changed the subject whenever anyone asked about his childhood. She looked down at her hands, clearly ashamed. I should have encouraged him to be proud of where he came from instead of letting him think he needed to hide it to fit into my world. I should have insisted on meeting you, on getting to know the woman who raised the man I fell in love with. Dorothy reached across the table and gently touched Jennifer's hand. Honey, you can't take responsibility for Marcus's choices. He's a grown man who made his own decisions. But I could have made it easier for him to make different choices, Jennifer insisted. My family, we can be intimidating. We have certain expectations, certain standards. I never questioned whether those standards were fair or right. When Marcus arrived a few minutes later, he found his mother and wife deep in conversation, the initial awkwardness already melting away. As he watched them together, he realized what he had almost lost. Not just his mother's love, but the opportunity for two important women in his life to know each other. Over lunch, Dorothy shared stories of Marcus's childhood, painting a picture of a determined young boy who had always dreamed big. Jennifer talked about her own upbringing, admitting that despite all the privileges she had enjoyed, she sometimes felt empty, like she was missing something important. Marcus talks about, "You all the time," Jennifer said to Dorothy. "At least he did before we got engaged. He would tell me about how you taught him to cook, how you helped him with his homework, how you never missed a school play or basketball game, even when you were working multiple jobs." Dorothy smiled. "He was such a good student. Always curious, always asking questions. I knew he was destined for great things. He told me once that you used to read to him every night, even when you were exhausted from work," Jennifer continued. "He said those were his favorite memories of childhood." Marcus looked surprised. "I told you that?" "You did. You talked about your mother with such love and admiration. I always wondered why you stopped." The question hung in the air, and Marcus struggled to answer it honestly. "I guess I thought I had to choose between my past and my future. I thought I couldn't have both." Dorothy reached for his hand. "Baby, your past is what made your future possible. You don't have to choose between them. They're part of the same story." As they continued talking, Jennifer began to see Marcus in a new light. The polished, sometimes distant man she had married was also a son who had been deeply loved and carefully raised by a remarkable woman. Understanding where he came from helped her understand who he truly was beneath the professional facade. "Dorothy," Jennifer said as lunch came to an end, "I hope you'll forgive me for saying this, but Marcus was an idiot for not wanting you at our wedding." Dorothy laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Well, I might have used a stronger word than idiot, but I appreciate the sentiment. I'd like to make it up to you, if you'll let me. We're having a small ceremony to renew our vows on our first anniversary. Nothing fancy, just family and close friends. Would you consider being there? As my guest of honor?" Dorothy looked at Marcus, who nodded eagerly. "I would love that, dear, but only if you're sure." "I'm sure," Jennifer said firmly. "I want to start our marriage the right way this time, with honesty, with family, and with you there to see it." Over the following months, Dorothy watched as her relationship with Marcus slowly healed and grew stronger than it had ever been. He began visiting her regularly, not out of obligation, but out of genuine desire to spend time with her. They talked about everything: his work, her community activities, their shared memories, and their hopes for the future. Marcus also began to change in other ways. He started talking openly about his background at work, sharing stories of his mother's sacrifices and strength. Rather than diminishing him in his colleagues' eyes, these stories enhanced their respect for him. They saw him not as someone who had pulled himself up from nothing, but as someone who had been blessed with a strong foundation of love and values. He also began volunteering at the community center in Dorothy's neighborhood, using his legal skills to help low-income families navigate bureaucratic challenges. It was his way of giving back to the community that had shaped him, and of honoring the values his mother had instilled in him. Jennifer, too, underwent her own transformation. She began spending time with Dorothy, learning about her new mother-in-law's life and experiences. She was amazed by Dorothy's resilience, her optimism despite hardships, and her ability to find joy in simple things. "I've learned more about real strength from your mother in 3 months than I learned in 30 years. In my privileged bubble," Jennifer told Marcus one evening. "She's taught me what it means to be truly rich." The couple also began to distance themselves from the more superficial aspects of their social circle, focusing instead on relationships that were built on genuine connection rather than status or appearance. They found themselves drawn to people who shared their values rather than their bank account balance. Margaret Patterson became a regular presence in Dorothy's life, not as a benefactor but as a true friend. They discovered they had much in common beyond their initial connection. Both were avid gardeners, both loved classic literature, and both had raised children as single mothers at different points in their lives. "You know," Margaret said one afternoon as they worked together in Dorothy's garden, "that night at the gala changed more than just your relationship with Marcus. It changed me too. It reminded me what really matters in life." Dorothy looked up from the tomato plants they were staking. "What do you mean?" "I've spent so much time focused on maintaining my position in society, on appearances and obligations, that I almost forgot about real connections. Watching you that night, seeing how you carried yourself with such dignity despite everything you'd been through, it made me realize that true class has nothing to do with money or status." The day of Marcus and Jennifer's vow renewal ceremony arrived on a perfect spring morning. Unlike their original wedding, this celebration was held in Dorothy's church, a small, modest building in the heart of the community where she had worshipped for 20 years. The guest list was small and meaningful: close friends, family members, and people who had supported the couple's journey toward authenticity and truth. Margaret and Charles Patterson were there, along with several of Dorothy's neighbors and friends from her volunteer work. Dorothy wore a beautiful dress that Jennifer had helped her choose, elegant but not ostentatious, perfect for the woman she had always been inside. Around her neck were her mother's pearls, and on her wrist was a new bracelet, a gift from Marcus and Jennifer inscribed with the words, "To the foundation of our family." As she watched her son and daughter-in-law exchange vows, real vows this time based on honesty and acceptance rather than pretense and exclusion, Dorothy felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years. The words they spoke to each other were about building a life together on truth, about honoring their families and their histories, about choosing love over fear. "I promise to never again be ashamed of where I came from," Marcus said, looking directly at his mother as he spoke. "I promise to honor the woman who made me who I am, and to teach our children about the strength and love that brought us to this moment." Jennifer's vows were equally moving. "I promise to embrace all of you, your past, your family, your experiences, because they are what make you the man I love. I promise to build our family on the foundation of honesty and inclusion, and to always remember that true wealth comes from the love we share, not the things we own." After the ceremony, the small reception was held in the church fellowship hall. It was simple but heartfelt: homemade food, flowers from Dorothy's garden, and music provided by the church choir. It was everything the original wedding reception had not been: authentic, warm, and filled with genuine love and connection. During the reception, Marcus stood to make a toast. "A year ago, I thought I was starting my life over, leaving my past behind to build something new. I was wrong. Today, I'm not starting over. I'm continuing a story that began when a young woman decided to love her son unconditionally, to sacrifice her own dreams for his future, and to teach him that real strength comes from character, not status." He raised his glass toward Dorothy. "To my mother, who taught me everything I know about love, sacrifice, and strength. Thank you for never giving up on me, even when I gave up on myself." The room erupted in applause, but Dorothy barely heard it. She was looking at her son, her successful, proud, loving son, and thinking about the journey that had brought them to this moment. 5 years later, Dorothy sat in her backyard, watching her 3-year-old grandson chase butterflies through the garden she and Marcus had expanded together. Little David had his father's curious nature and his grandmother's gentle spirit, and he brought joy to every room he entered. Marcus had bought the house next door to Dorothy's, renovating it into a beautiful family home while keeping the original character that connected it to the neighborhood's history. He had also established a scholarship fund in Dorothy's name, providing educational opportunities for children from single-parent households. Jennifer had left her high-powered corporate law position to start a non-profit organization focused on supporting working mothers. She often said that Dorothy had shown her what real purpose looked like, and she wanted to spend her life helping other women achieve their dreams while raising their children. The family gathered every Sunday for dinner at Dorothy's house, a tradition that had started shortly after the vow renewal and had become the cornerstone of their week. These meals were filled with laughter, storytelling, and the kind of easy connection that Dorothy had always dreamed of having with her son, Anne. This particular Sunday, as they cleaned up after dinner, Jennifer approached Dorothy with a nervous smile. "Dorothy, Marcus and I have something to tell you," she said, taking her mother-in-law's hands. "We're pregnant again, and if it's a girl, we'd like to name her Dorothy." Dorothy felt tears spring to her eyes as Marcus put his arm around her shoulders. "We want our daughter to have your strength, your grace, and your beautiful heart," he said. "We can't think of a better name for her to carry." As Dorothy looked around at her family, her son, who had found his way back to her daughter-in-law, who had become a true daughter, her grandson, who filled her days with laughter, she thought about the journey that had brought them all together. She thought about the phone call that had broken her heart, the wedding she had watched from afar, the night she had been honored for simply being herself. She thought about forgiveness and redemption, about the power of unconditional love and the importance of never giving up on the people who matter most. Most of all, she thought about the lesson she had learned and passed on to her family, that true beauty comes from within, that real wealth is measured in love rather than money, and that the most important thing any person can do is to see and celebrate the worth in others. As the sun set over their neighborhood, the same neighborhood, where she had raised Marcus, struggled and sacrificed and loved, Dorothy smiled. She had let her son smile one last time before he learned the most important lesson of his life. And in doing so, she had discovered her own worth, her own beauty, and her own power to change not just her own story, but the stories of everyone around her. The little boy who had once brought her dandelions and called her the prettiest mommy in the world had grown into a man who finally understood what real beauty looked like. And the woman who had been called too ugly for a wedding had become the foundation upon which an entire family built their understanding of love, grace, and unconditional acceptance. Dorothy Williams had not just survived her son's rejection, she had transformed it into a story of redemption that would be passed down through generations, a testament to the power of a mother's love and the beauty that comes from a life lived with dignity, purpose, and an open heart.